Well, welcome everyone. Glad you're here. Um, Today's topic is pipes, and we're going to get started on that here very soon. Um, I thought while we're getting people in that we would do a couple poll questions to kind of to get us started today. Um, so our first question, and I wrote this a week or two ago now, so maybe not as appropriate today when the high is supposed to be like 75 or something, but I've been down in Oklahoma City for the last 2 days, 3 days, when it was between 100 and 102 every day that I was there. So anyway, so the question is, it's been hot lately. What's the highest temperature that, how are we working this? Are they
So,
getting,
so this is just a short fill in the blank. Just let us
oh,
know
okay.
what the highest temperature is that you've seen in your city or county.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. And then I guess our second question is whether you're with a city or a county consultant or some other agency, group, company, whatever. And then the final question is getting us into pipes. Um, Really, I'm not a pipe expert. That's why Dan Wadley is here. But trying to get some sort of a question about pipes. So my question is just how many pipes do you order or replace each year? And I didn't know what was reasonable, but it looks like I've got a pretty good range there. Um, or again, if I was answering it, I would certainly do the last one. I don't order pipes. I'm just here for the discussion. Um, so just trying to get some ideas of where everybody is and how important of an issue this is for you, um, that sort of thing. So how do we see the results of the, I have to end it probably.
Yeah, go ahead and end that poll.
We'll go ahead and do that. And then I still don't see the results of the first question.
Yeah, sorry, Zoom updated their polls, so they're a little bit different now. But I have those pulled up and it looks like Justin Mater said that they were up to 104 and Jenna Newman was 102. I'm trying to decode all of this.
Sorry, I didn't.
Thomas Snodgrass, sorry if I butchered your name there, was 103.
Wow. All right, sounds good. And then it looks like probably as I would expect, 50% of the people are with counties. Um, I think last time we had a few more consultants. Um, Obviously, one city and three others that are um, with other type agencies, and quite a range of um, pipe usage. I assume everybody can see this, that there's a little of everything here. So anyway, what I thought we'd do is um, uh, have Dan Wadley just talk a little. So first of all, Dan Wadley is, I believe, the Bureau Chief of Research. Is that correct?
Yep.
And with KDOT, Kansas Department of Transportation. And I was trying to get an expert, and everybody I talked to kept pointing, well, Dan is the person, Dan is the person, Dan is the person. So we were originally going to have this discussion in June, and Dan wasn't available. So we're glad he's here today. I think he's going to start off with talking about the most recent version of KDOT's pipe policy, which hopefully you can remind me if this applies to counties or if it's just an option for counties to use. I mean, certainly if I'm sure if it's on a KDOT project that this would apply, but does it also apply? I mean, I assume a county can use whatever they want if they, or city, if it's on their own project.
Yeah, I mean, some counties and cities reference KDOT spec or use it as a baseline for developing theirs. I mean, it's there for that use. And so yeah, we basically have a KDOT pipe policy committee. It meets twice a year, or supposed to meet twice a year, and it is the governing body that creates this kind of policy specification. I guess it's more of a policy, but it encapsulates um, all the different types of installations and the types of pipe. The chart that people probably have heard of the most or have probably I get the most questions about is the oh, where'd it go? This use table, which has now disappeared. Tried to rotate it so you could see it. Well, everybody just gets to turn their heads because this is attachment 3. This is the table. And basically what it does is it goes in by county. We have by district and by county, and then it delineates whether or not it's allowed for use or whether or not there's restrictions. And so A would be allowed for use, blank would be not allowed, and then the numbers represent the footnotes, not allowed under highway of a certain ADT, so forth and so on, or in the case of our polyethylene or polypropylene pipe, they require concrete or metal end sections for use. And so this is the table that sort of governs the use for different situations, under main line, side roads, and then by type of pipe, galvanized, aluminized, polymer coated, so forth. So, and this is all based on the soil conditions in those counties where we've gone out and looked at the pH and determined that it's corrosive or not corrosive. And so that's where the, guidance kind of sets up which type of material is allowed. It's updated however frequently there are changes that get made to it, which is we get questions at every meeting. So probably every 2 years, 2 or 3 years, it gets updated. So if you ever have questions, I think everybody's pretty much invited to that meeting. We were supposed to have it last month, but I haven't got it scheduled yet. So usually we try to meet in July and then find another time during the year. Oh, I think we might be trying to dovetail in the winter meeting at the KCA convention in Kansas City, simply because that way contractors are all kind of already there at that meeting. We've never done that before, but yeah, the idea got brought up. Thought it might be a good idea. So we'll probably try that this year. The second
Dan,
document, yeah,
if you want to send me the information when you schedule that, I can, if anybody is interested, um, they can let me know and I will forward that to them when I get the information.
okay.
So either put it in the chat or something if you're interested in knowing about that pipe committee meeting.
So I am by no means an expert. My background is in structures and stuff, and so I'm learning about this stuff like everybody else quickly, and you know, um, it is good to come to some of these meetings, or at least if if you're interested in learning more about it, just hearing the words and nothing else, putting some names with faces, it's a good thing. But this RD 658 sheet, this is a sheet that's been about 15, 20 years in the making. And so it's finally been put together and finished, and it's sort of just a guidance for the field inspector on how the different types of pipe should be set up. And we included some minimum loading conditions or some load limits for um, during construction that wasn't there before to help the field folks out. And it just is the idea is to help sort of make sure that we're getting a standard installation, a picture to go with the words that are already in the spec, but then giving a little bit more specificity to some of those words. And so yeah, that's the other sheet. We've also updated some of the sheets for the end sections for plastic pipe. So they, as I spoke about earlier, um, all the polypropylene and polyethylene pipes, they need to have a metal or concrete end sections. I'm trying to find those standards. I can show you one. Here's an example of one, the metal one. And so these are all new, basically giving a good end section to those plastic pipes so they don't get destroyed by mowers and errant vehicles and everything else that comes off the road. Because that was in some of our test installations with the HDPE plastic pipe, they did get chewed up by mowers. So those are probably the most recent updates. As far as the use table goes, we did in this most recent version allow polypropylene. So PP pipe is now allowed for District 1 and District 4 on sort of a test basis. Well, not test. You can use it on projects, but we're testing it out in those districts first. And then from there, depending on how it goes, it might expand to other districts. But for right now, those are the only ones allowed in. And with that, I will stop and see if there's any questions.
Yeah, feel free to unmute yourself, or if you feel more comfortable, you can put something in the chat, or is raising your hand an option? It would just whatever, however you want to do this. But I mean, the intent of the roundabout in general is to encourage that discussion, both with, in this case, the subject matter expert of Dan, however much he wants to consider himself an expert, and within other participants. So any initial questions?
I've got a question. Justin Mayer, Sling County. So, Dan, have you come across any issues with using galvanized end sections on an aluminized pipe?
Hmm.
I've had some. We've been doing it for years, and I've had some manufacturers say, "Oh, you really shouldn't do that because the two different material types will create a thing, whatever that is, and it'll deteriorate quicker."
Yeah, basically sets up an electric circuit. As you're, um, I mean, I could see that being a potential problem as the galvanizing basically, once it wears away, or if it gets a nick through it, you've set up that voltage circuit where it'll start sacrificing the galvanized, or I guess vice versa if your aluminized wore out first. The dissimilar metals deal, I don't know. I mean, we've been approached. Y- Yeah, I don't know if we've studied that exact condition or not, so I'd have to go look. Sounds
Okay.
like a great research project. Do you
Yep.
have a lot of those? Do you have a lot of those installed that way?
Oh yeah, we've been doing, we installed quite a few pipes, both entrance pipes and crossroad pipes where, we've been purchasing the aluminized pipe, but then, just trying to cut back on some costs,
Sure.
because aluminized pipe are what, another 10 to 15% higher. Um, Buying just the galvanized in sections. So we've been doing that at least 5 years probably.
How many years are you getting out of the end sections?
Right now we're getting at least five. So and they're
Yeah.
doing just fine. I mean,
Yeah.
that's probably about really all we have. Um, really, and anything like old is, there's no in sections. Everything we put in now is an in section, but we're usually replacing something that does not have an in section. So who knows how long we're actually getting um, a life out of an in section.
Yeah, and oftentimes they'll get destroyed by other means before they
Correct.
corrode. So it's like
Correct.
that's why you end up with the galvanized option in the first place. Just
Hmm.
it's never going to see the end of its corrosive life.
Right. Right. Yeah, especially the entrance pipes.
Hmm.
Because they usually get run over by someone.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I mean, even if the science proved a different answer, I'd say you already got the right answer.
yeah. Yep. Okay. When I was planning on continuing that, and but I just didn't know if you have any input on it.
No,
So
I can look into it and see if we've ever investigated that, and if not, we could quite possibly investigate it.
yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Is that something anybody else on the call has experienced, either with those different materials, or do you use in sections? All right. Other questions or comments, again, either for Dan or each other?
This is Justin again. I'll throw out a question. I'm just kind of curious on other counties if they use the plastic pipe, and if they've had any regrets.
This is Jessica with Sedgwick County. Um, we follow KDOT policy to the T. So at this point, we're still using either aluminum pipe or the RCPs. Our entrance pipes, people try to put in plastic pipe all the time. We make them take them out just because once it's in the ground, we're responsible for it, and we don't want to take on that responsibility at this point. So.
And
Now,
that's kind of what we do. Once the landowner installs something, then it's our responsibility. So we don't allow it, but I'm just
Yeah.
curious.
when you say plastic, do you mean the high density polyethylene, the
Yes.
ribbed black
We
thin
get
Correct.
plastic?
we get all kinds that get
Yeah. No, yeah, people want to put in a Schedule 40.
yeah, they do. Or anything, honestly. A
Anything.
recycled stovepipe.
Right.
Anything. So uh,
Hmm.
we're pretty stringent on what we allow.
Okay.
This is Lance Forgy with Potawatomi County. And just going back to Justin, yeah, we use aluminized with galvanized in sections as well. and we don't allow plastic pipe at all.
Because
Yeah,
we,
and with the plastic, I don't know if that's just a thing we've got to get used to or get over. I mean, is it really just us, not,
yeah,
thinking, oh, it's plastic, so we don't want it. But is it really that big of an issue?
well, plastic HDPE, so the black ribbed plastic is a little bit different of a material than the poly propylene or polyethylene. Sorry, polypropylene, which is the gray stuff.
Okay.
So we have separated those out into two different categories. So we have the PE, the HDPE, the polyethylene, which also includes the steel ribbed polyethylene. That's all one category. And then the polypropylene is a separate category. That's the gray. It's sort of the more superior product in terms of durability and longevity, so to speak. Then that's why we kind of went with that one to start this trial for District 1 and District 4. District 4 is they probably have the most experience installing plastic on the from the maintenance side of any of us. And so that's kind of why and they also have a lot of flooding. So that's why they were the guinea pig and also District 1. It's we're close by so we can sort of be here to help check some of those. We do have a project going right now with KU, with Jihan. He's trying to come up with some um, sort of um, high tech, but yet easily deployable by any one of us technology to where we can go in and more quickly survey for deflection and for change of grade an installed pipe to where we can check it long term for creep or deflection. Um, they just got started on that, and that's using a 33-foot plastic polypropylene section. And the hope is any of those pipes that will go in the ground the next couple of years will install this, whatever method that he kind of comes up with. Right now, we're surveying them all, just old-fashioned, crawl in there with the stick and shoot it and see what we've got. So we just concluded a 20 plus year study with the three plastic HDPE plastic, so black plastic pipes that we'd installed down by Galena, and they showed no further deflection after that length of time other than the deflection that was caused during construction. And that was checked by survey and also by mandrel. So me on a skateboard sliding through this thing, enjoying the fine sludge that's in there. But I highly recommend wintertime for those activities,
Yeah.
unless you're friends with snakes. But we get a lot of questions about fire concerns on the plastic. Honestly, I don't. Obviously District 3 had some fires last year that were pretty bad. Um, most of that is why we have required the end sections be metal or concrete. Um, I think
Yeah.
the
So
biggest thing with them is uplift. Like if they launch out of the ground, if you don't do the math right on, your initial design.
yeah, so we don't allow any of the HDPE or the polyethylene, the PP.
Yeah,
But what we have been doing though is we've been lining a lot of pipes under asphalt surface road with a plastic type pipe. Mayor Specialty Services, they install a thermoform,
yep.
liners, and we're doing probably 20 a year, with that stuff. So We are putting it in. And I'm a pretty firm believer of the pipelining process versus cutting your asphalt road.
Yep. Get extra time out of it. Just all depends on how bad the structure is damaged. I mean, as long as you can reestablish your flow line and it's not too badly damaged.
When we're lining, it's a lot of cases when you're saying damaged, I'm saying gone. The
Mm-hmm.
bottom of it's completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it hasn't settled any yet, really hasn't moved, but there ain't much left of the existing structure.
But it's not crushing. Like you're
No,
not, yeah.
correct. Yeah, it's nothing like that.
So here in Sedgwick County, we also have concerns on fires. Historically, I don't know if we've ever had any issue with fires, but there's concern. Um, both wildfires and controlled burns from our farmers. Uh, as far as installation goes, how easy is it to install plastic pipe? I mean, I'm assuming it's easier just because it's lighter, but is that
Yeah, this is the thing that got us looking at it in the first place was that you could, in a weekend, like in District 4, they have so much flooding where they're getting stuff completely blasted out and they got to rebuild and get the route open. You can bring in 4 sticks on a 40-foot trailer and put it in with no problem,
Mhm.
very, very light forces and equipment and get the road back open.
Okay?
So from a maintenance standpoint, there's there's a lot of benefits in
Yeah.
terms of time and install and manpower and so forth. But again, it kind of goes back, does it also perform long term?
Mhm.
The fire gets brought up a lot, and everything that I've come across says it's not an issue, that maybe the ends will get a little bit of heat treatment or get a little bit warped, but they won't like the full pipe itself, the length of it, you're not going to have a fire going down the whole length of the barrel.
Okay.
Now, have we put this out and, you know, intentionally tried to roast the whole thing? No, and we certainly haven't, you know, I would have no problem with the grass fire. I
Mhm.
think where you end up with trouble is if you have a whole bunch of thistle or debris or sticks that gets caught in a fairly good sized 3 foot or larger type of thing at one of the ends, and that catches fire, and then that's going to warp, you will burn up probably that end, but that's come in, tear out that first 10-foot end, stick another piece on, off you go.
Yeah.
It's not like the whole road's going to be damaged.
Okay. Good to know.
Um, yeah,
And good thoughts. I think it's just a matter of thinking, honestly.
I mean, my biggest concern is I've seen a couple of them go in kind of fast, and if you don't knife in the material around the haunches
Mhm.
and take the time to actually do a good job on those haunches, because that's what's carrying the load,
Mhm.
that's where you're going to get in trouble. And so we've been exploring uh, some options. Jihan's come up with this foamed concrete. It's basically a mortar. It's like a soil. It's sort of like a um, lightweight sailor fill. Basically,
Like a
got
flowable fill.
yeah, it's like a
Mhm.
flowable fill, but it's more bubbly and it's soil comparable to soil in terms of unit weight, but it'll set up overnight and it'll allow you to get into some of those tighter spots where you have to do a lot more work normally. I don't think we've tried it for installations with plastic yet, but might be one that I suggest they look at as a workaround on some of that. So I think it's just like everything else. You can't cut corners on installation, which is part of why we put that standard drawing together to kind of help, give people some guidance. All of our neighboring states around us are using it. And so um, it's kind of why we were like, sit back and wait and see how it goes, see if we hear any horror stories. So if you do, pass them along. We're all ears, but yeah.
Yeah. Does KDOT have a spec on the polymer coated galvanized pipe?
The alumini, or yeah, we do have polymer coated. Yep.
Oh, there it is. Sorry.
Yep. Polymer
Right.
coated, aluminized, and galvanized, those are all in the corrugated steel category, and those are ones that we received some comments at the last pipe meeting asking for them to be upgraded, um, saying that those some of the manufacturing techniques had improved in the coating world and they were wanting to be upgraded. And I mean,
Especially how to repair. I mean, because I've used a polymer coated. When I've got to put a pipe under an asphalt road, I'll do a polymer coated, and it's a lot of times it'll get nicked.
yeah,
And the contractor will blame the manufacturer will blame the contractor, whatever. But it's in your spec in there. Does it talk about how to repair?
I can't remember that off the top of my head. I'd have to go
Because
look at it,
okay, we
but I
we
know
were
that it
told they were just to dump a bunch of that roofing tar, over the scratch, and I was like,
that's exactly why it's in the category that it's in. Because if you can't preserve that, I
mm,
mean, that's your coating, that's your protection, and once that's gone, what do you got? So,
right,
and we know that stuff happens. And most of the time that it happens, it doesn't get fixed or repaired. So now you're left with the bill for the service life of that element to maintain it.
right.
So I'm going to jump in just to draw everyone's attention. First of all, Marshall County apparently uses aluminized pipe, no plastic pipe. Um, Jennifer Harrell with the South Central Region um, ACPA is offering to host a webinar on the differences in flexible versus rigid design. And then she also asked if anyone was aware of the ASTM E60 standards that are getting ready to be passed, called Standard Guide for Resilience-Based Design of Culvert and Storm Drain Pipes Exposed to Wildfire Events. And there apparently is another one due to flooding events. So any thoughts or comments on those?
Or
Wait,
questions?
questions? Yeah. I'm assuming
Anybody interested in being updated on those standards?
I have not read them, but would be interested in them once they get published.
Okay, perfect.
I know that the climate discussion has been heating up, no pun intended, at TRB over the last couple of years. And so it's on people's radar, but it's very unclear what direction folks should be taking. I mean, luckily we're in a non-coastal environment, so we don't have some of the problems that they have to deal with on the coast. However, we have different problems, namely the intensity of the storms are changing, and areas that are lower are experiencing more frequent flooding and so forth. And so, scour is still a concern. Maybe not as big a concern as it is in other places, but we definitely have to keep paying attention to it.
I would
Well,
assume
let me
the
know if there's any interest in that specifications comparison. It could be AASHTO Section 27 versus AASHTO Section 30, or those are more on the installation. But I have a presentation that goes over the differences of design of flexible versus rigid as well as installation. If anybody's interested, I'd be more than happy to give a presentation or a webinar.
thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other thoughts, questions, discussion? well, if you do, feel free to let me know, and we'll get those questions probably directed to Dan and see if in the future if it's something that he can help us with. I really appreciate you being here today, Dan. It obviously is a topic of interest, and you were great at speaking to those issues.
Yeah, I appreciate the chance to visit with everybody, and certainly, as you do come across things, feel free to reach out. Obviously, we manage the research department here at KDOT, so our internal research and then also our university research. Yesterday we had Research Needs Day, which is an annual event, usually this first week of August, where industry or basically anybody, internal to KDOT, external to KDOT, university, industry, can all suggest topics of interest. We have a form that you can get to from our website. Just search on the KDOT website, find research, and there's a project idea form. And so, for example, what we were talking about, Justin, even if you just want to send something in and say, hey, have you ever looked at this, or this just might be an idea for future work. The meeting that we had yesterday is there to set up a back and forth between the university investigators and KDOT, but then by virtue of KDOT extension to everybody else, a conversation between needs and ideas, and that sets up the pre-proposals that they send in from the universities to try to get funded for K-Trans. And so if there's something out there that we need to look at, that option is always there. If we want a university level work to be done on it, we also have our internal KDOT work that we do, which we sometimes look at this stuff in-house. Sometimes we bump it up to the next level for a university to look at it. But we always have those options available. So if there's stuff out there that you're seeing, you have concerns, you want to look at things, by all means, email away and ask, and we'll see if we can't get it looked at or see if it hasn't already been looked at. So thanks for
Sounds good.
the
Thank you
feedback and
again.
opportunity to visit.
I would so for future webinars, I was hoping that we could that I could get some input on what might be of interest in the future. I thought I had a list, but I'm not sure that I do. So here are some ideas of what we might, first of all, can you see what I'm sharing right? Yeah. Hopefully so, yes. Another version like gives you a red box around the one that you're sharing. But anyway, so the kind of tannish list were ones that I had just brainstormed as we were first starting out. To be honest, most of these are ones that are more things that I am familiar with. So those are things that are of more of interest to me, but that's not everybody here. When I was at KCHA, I was actually considering including some of the vendors in our discussion about pipes. And then I realized as I was looking at the vendors that there's a lot of different vendors besides just pipes that were there. And so I visited with some of them and got some additional ideas. So I'd appreciate if anybody feels like any of these are great topics, or if you have a topic that you'd like to discuss. That's kind of where pipes came from. Our first webinar we had back in February we had some discussions, and pipes was the first thing that got thrown out as an idea, which again was not something that I had considered, but obviously it is a topic that has interest. So any of these ideas sound good, or anything that isn't on our lists that you'd like to discuss in future webinars? And again, we can bring in a quote unquote expert, or just, again, the intent is to have that roundtable discussion with other agencies, which I really appreciated today.
I've got something that, we've recently had some concrete pavement installed, and we immediately had cracking on a significant portion of that. And so and I'm just wondering if it's due to the new cement, that's being created, the 1L, is that right, Wayne? 1L cement, I think that's what it's called. And so I think what I would like to see is, something about, what practices does the industry need to do different with this new cement? Because I've heard there's some issues. I know there was a presentation at KCHA that was very technical.
That was Dan, I think.
Was that you, Dan? So and just getting down to the specifics on what do we need to do differently, or make sure the contractors are doing differently on our concrete projects. I mean, whether it's pavement or structures.
Yeah, this is about a 6 to 8 beer conversation.
Okay, if you're trying to sell it to me, you did a good job.
I would say probably the biggest change, what the question that you're asking is the grind, and so that has changed the bleed water rate on a lot of jobs. You're just not going to see any bleed water. You're going to see less of it than compared to before, and that's throwing people off for saw cutting times. It's also throwing people off. In some cases, it's being tremendously overworked, which can trap in some moisture, especially I think where this is the most dramatic is if you've got a contractor that's using finishing aids. Finishing aids are 90% water. And so they're just putting it on the drum on the screed. They're working that water into that top 1/8 inch. Then they're coming along and re-blessing it and reworking that in. And it's just turning that top 1/8 inch into a much higher water cement ratio, and it's trapping in some of the bleed water potentially, if there is any. It's most likely none. So the slab's a lot drier than that top 1/8 inch. You come back a year later, top surface scales off. That's on a bridge deck. On paving, if you don't get it covered or protected, in other words, if you're not going to do wet burlap, some kind of a white pigmented curing compound immediately, or again, overworking that top surface too much, you're going to have plastic shrinkage cracking galore. And so it's really, really sensitive to the curing. You got to really get it wet burlap down, get it cured. That's KDOT specification, is to do that regime, the wet burlap. We have done a project with the polyethyl methylstyrene, that PAMS curing, finishing curing material that is really nasty stuff, but it works super well. Minnesota's had good luck with it. I don't know if you guys have used it or if you use it, but really just to pay attention to old things that we used to do a long time ago that we've gotten out of the habit of doing, like curing and taking care of it, are pretty much going to be critical going forward.
Yeah, I mean, they put a curing compound down right away. and they came in early, so it wasn't super, super hot out, but it got hot later that day. But
Hmm.
yeah, we had cracking, throughout. I mean, within 12 hours, pretty significant cracking. So I just thought it would be good to have this discussion from everybody. Especially counties, we don't put down a lot of or concrete.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's a lot of ignorance, and I'm definitely included in part of that. If you're doing a locally funded project, what do we need to make sure the contractors are doing or not doing?
Yeah.
And so that's why I thought it'd be a good topic.
Yeah, the evapotranspiration rate I think is a lot less. I don't have a research study to support that conclusion, just hypothetical talking from what we're seeing, but you just it's got to be protected. So for KDOT overlay mixes, we've started putting 1.5 pounds of microfiber in it. Initially, I was kind of against it because I had concerns that it was going to hurt us on permeability, but I understand bridge design wanted it for trying to control plastic shrinkage. Well, my opinion is we shouldn't use a material to correct for a contractor problem, but I also get it. Like they want to do everything we can to protect it. I understand that because any cracking is already a crack is worse than a very permeable mix. So
Mm-hmm.
you can do all you want to protect the mix, but if the bridge deck cracks from plastic shrinkage cracking, you've done nothing. You've accomplished nothing. So, okay, let's put the fibers in, can help control the plastic shrinkage, help them talk to them about educating them on trying to make sure we get the burlap down, that it's pre-wetted and it's not going down dry and you're just sitting there with a garden hose. Like doing all those things, good practices, old time practices, those are the things that are going to help us. Um, as far as we've been running calorimetry on all the cements that come in, and for the most part, they're mostly the same, very similar to what they were as a type 1, 2. So my opinion is that 1L is not the boogeyman. However, you got to stick to first principles if you don't want to have first principles mistakes. I will say I don't know if there seem to be more jobs that if you have a really tight confined, if you're concrete on all sides, like if your curb is still there and you're pouring that last piece in between half of it that's already there and a curb, that we're seeing a lot more pop outs or stuff that's where if you don't have a flexible joint material in there to absorb some of that expansion initially, that's happening a lot more. I don't know. Again, is it first principles? Is it weak paste at the very top surface? Like, what is it? I don't know. Again, great research project. Go throw a bunch of strain gauges in it and see what happens. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that, I mean, would you like to discuss this more, Justin, with other agencies, or is this discussion enough today? Or, I mean, obviously, somebody who thought our discussion today was on pipes didn't get to hear, and they may be interested in the concrete discussion in the future. What are you thinking?
I mean, for counties, it's more concrete structures versus concrete pavement. For counties, anyways, and so I mean, I still think it would be good as more people hear about what needs to be done differently, especially for structures.
I would
Okay.
love to listen in on that. I know KCMMB just got through last meeting. They had a similar talk. I didn't get to attend, but I really wanted to. Um, I know that the 1L cement is here to stay, and obviously all of the conversations are geared towards greater and greater amounts of substitution. So what 1L cement is you've got a 10% limestone, raw limestone going back in with the clinker. And so you've got 90% clinker, 10% raw limestone. And that's the Christmas bonus to the cement manufacturers because they don't have to spend as much energy making as much, clinker. Well, it's good for the environment on the standpoint of you are reducing the global warming potential that way, but it's also they're making a pretty good penny on that, um, cutting down on costs. Well, that is planned to increase to higher and higher substitution rates as we go forward once they can figure it out. Um, you don't get any reaction. You don't get any like pozzolanic reaction with the um, limestone unless you've got slag in your mix as a supplementary cementitious material. Well, then you do get a little bit of a boost. The slag and the limestone play well together, and so you get a strength enhancement out of that. You would not get that enhancement if you had C ash or F ash in the mix the same way. So that's the part that we're kind of trying to figure out is if we're going to go down that path of greater substitution rates, can you make, how are you going to get that to work? And it takes us down the path of more and more kind of complicated cement types. So you'll hear blended cements where somebody might put in 5% slag, 10 or 15 or 20% limestone, substitution rate as a blended cement type, and then market that as a different name. And then you've got the calcined clay, the LC3s, it's coming on whole nother almost hybrid type. So yeah, there's a lot of discussion about this and head scratching going on. Like, what are we going to do? How are
Is
we going
it
to
too
test it?
early to have this conversation
Oh,
then
no.
with other counties? That I mean, again, conversations with ignorant people like myself.
No,
Is it too early?
I
No.
think now's a great time to have it because it informs our discussion going forward on these greater and greater substitution rates or different types of cements.
Would it be beneficial to have people from the industry, like the Portland, or the concrete pavement associations, represented from there, or
I mean,
the Portland, I don't know, whoever is the Portland Cement.
it is. I mean, obviously, you're not going to hear that there won't be any problems from their point of view, but
I understand, yes.
it it's kind of I think it's it'd be fun to have a talk where you talk about what we're seeing, what are the issues that we're seeing, can we parcel out what some of those issues might be? It does get tricky trying to do that because sometimes we don't know, sometimes it's a combination of a bunch of things.
Mhm.
But even just talking about what we're seeing, maybe somebody can either briefly answer or hypothetically answer what it might be. And if it's something that we want to look into further, we could. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's also, more of a, conversation about those older best practices.
mhm,
Contractor shows up, make sure he wets down the
yep.
base or subgrade. Make sure they do this, make sure, and maybe it's to reiterate those old practices that's more important now.
I think I absolutely think that it would be great to do that, um, both from a practical sense and a reduction in workload and stuff coming into my lab.
Mhm. Right.
Like last winter, we got a lot of frozen concrete samples where people were placing well below freezing, or they shouldn't have been placing. They were worried about frozen, damage. The strength gains were dismal. Um, what do we do? Stuff like that. It's like, well, pour when it's warmer, for one, cover it, which some cases did or didn't happen, cover it with 2 layers of blankets, stuff like that. And if it's going to be out there for a long time, tent it and heat it. I mean, it's not impossible to do. You just have to take care in the work of doing it to make it end up right. So yeah, there's plenty of things we can talk about just on that alone.
Yeah, because I think part of the bigger issue is when KDOT's not involved and you don't necessarily have to have a certified construction inspector out there. It's locally funded,
Yep.
projects. I think it would be most beneficial.
Yep.
Would it be interest of having surrounding material engineers have a roundtable group discussion
At a
of
brewery.
surrounding states?
No, I mean, sure. Yeah. I mean, for the most part, good practices are good practices. There's a lot of differences between different states and their specifications that might get kind of muddy, but I think for the most part. I
I
mean,
mean, I
wouldn't
think
you
for,
agree, Jennifer? Like, I mean, concrete's concrete. It's
Yep.
you take care of it, it'll do just fine. If you don't take care of it, it won't.
I just think we are losing people that have knowledge on that best
Mm-hmm.
practices.
Yeah. Yeah, and so yeah, just from a staffing or a workflow development standpoint, it'd be good to have the conversation, especially now. Yeah.
so I guess what I'm kind of thinking is having this discussion at our December roundabout, because that will be December 13th, and the Kansas Association of Counties is meeting December 3rd through 5th, and we can maybe promote at that time people to participate in a, I mean, obviously we still send out emails and everything, but I think if we can even give, a 1 or 2 minute encouragement at KAC for people to participate, that might be a good time to have that discussion. What do you, any thoughts on that? And then do something different in October. I know Kai suggested maybe ProAg or access management, that we might look into a little bit more for October. Obviously, that's something that I could talk about, but I'd also like to see if there might be somebody else that can provide a different perspective than necessarily mine all the time. So I'll pursue one of those for October and plan on some sort of concrete discussion for December. And in
You
the
said
meantime, again, go ahead.
December 13th, you said is your meeting?
It's our next, well,
Our
the
webinar?
next webinar will be just in December. The December webinar is on the 13th. The Kansas Association of Counties is the 3rd through the 5th. Our October webinar will be on October the 11th at 11. So again, it's the second, just a reminder, second Friday of every other month. So even months at 11. And if you aren't on our mailing list, I would suggest you go to ksltap.org. That's the easiest thing to remember. And if you go there, down at the bottom, there's a like a sign up box to get on our mailing list, so that you get notified about when things like this are going on. Or watch for us on LinkedIn or Facebook. Kara's good about promoting in a variety of ways. So again, I appreciate everybody's discussion today. Thanks again, Dan. Thank you especially to also to Justin and Jessica and those that have participated in the discussion. That's really the intent of this. So thank you all. Have a good weekend.